Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that no secret is ever truly buried, and when the fragile facade of one woman's identity begins to crumble, it threatens to consume everyone tethered to her past. Nicole Stanton, once the cherished jewel of the Stanton media dynasty, felt the weight of relentless scrutiny bearing down on her like a tidal wave. Reporters hounded her for celebrity endorsements, tabloids dissected her every step, and her employer's demands stretched her resilience to its breaking point. Exhausted by the glare of attention and the unending expectations to present a flawless image, she resolved to take a rare moment for herself, a routine health checkup at the privately run Stanton Medical Center, where her credentials guaranteed privacy. Little did she know that a single, clinical reflection would shatter her understanding of her very existence and send her spiraling into a labyrinth of hidden truths. Sitting in the sterile examination room, Nicole tried to calm her racing heart as a nurse prepared to administer a series of tests. She had grown accustomed to feeling disconnected from her body, focusing instead on maintaining her public persona: glossy hair, designer suits, and a carefully sculpted smile. But when the doctor returned with her results, his expression was disturbingly earnest. "Nicole," he began gently, "we've confirmed that you've never been pregnant. There's no medical evidence that suggests you've ever given birth." At first, she thought she had misheard. How could this be? She blinked, processing the statement, the room begging for silent acknowledgement. Her mind spun back to fleeting memories of youthful dreams, rocking a cradle, coaxing a baby to sleep, and the warmth she believed she would feel as a mother. Those images felt real, yet now they dissolved into a haze of confusion. "I've never," she whispered, voice cracking. "Never?" The doctor nodded, compassion softening his tone, but his words hit her like an avalanche. She left the clinic in a daze, the fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor dissolving into spots of glare as panic coiled in her chest. In the days that followed, Nicole felt as though she were inhabiting someone else's life. The routines that once brought her comfort: morning yoga sessions, afternoons poring over philanthropic proposals, evenings spent counseling young interns, abandoned their meaning. She found herself questioning every memory, the lullabies she believed she had sung to her daughter, the nursery she had decorated in pastel hues, and the sense of completeness she had taken for granted. A single alarm bell resounded louder than the rest: her relationship with Eva Dupree Richardson, whom she had always believed to be her cousin by marriage. Their bond had felt unshakable, forged in childhood holidays spent exploring labyrinthine library stacks and summer adventures racing through meadows near the Stanton estate. But the doctor's revelation cracked that sense of kinship. If she had never given birth, who was Eva? As dawn broke on a bright Saturday morning, Nicole realized that she could no longer ignore the questions gnawing at her mind. She had to know the truth. Armed with nothing but her own intuition and a fierce determination, Nicole began her investigation at the Stanton Medical Center, requesting copies of her medical records from childhood to the present. It took careful negotiation to bypass the usual red tape. After all, the Stanton name carried immense weight, but her insistence and familiarity with hospital administration smoothed the way. As she pored over ancient files, she discovered a peculiar notation in her neonatal chart. Her birth mother was not a Stanton at all, but a woman named Margaret Simmons, residing in a remote corner of rural Missouri. The fabric of Nicole's identity began to fray with each line she read. Her adoptive parents, Henry and Mariah Stanton, had always been loving guardians, showering her with affection and opportunity. Yet here, in these brittle pages, lay a truth that Henry and Mariah had apparently kept buried. Nicole had been adopted at 6 months old, a fact so obscured by family loyalty that even she, raised in the lap of luxury, had remained ignorant. Determined to confront her adoptive parents, Nicole arranged a discreet dinner in the private dining room of their hometown estate. Henry Stanton, a man of steely composure who sat at the head of a mahogany table carved with Stanton family crests, looked up from his soup as she entered. Mariah, whose kindness had always comforted Nicole, greeted her with a warm smile that faltered as she noticed the turmoil in her daughter's eyes. Nicole laid the medical records before them, watching as their expressions flickered from polite surprise to guarded defensiveness. "Mom, Dad," she began, voice wavering, "I never wanted to betray your trust, but I've just learned something I can't ignore. These records say I was adopted. Who is my birth mother?" For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a heavy sigh, Mariah reached for Nicole's hand. "We thought it best for you not to know, darling," she said softly. Margaret Simmons was in desperate circumstances. She couldn't care for you. We promised her we would give you a good life. Nicole's heart pounded as she absorbed the admission. You promised? But what about me? Did I ever matter if this was hidden? The silence that followed felt like a chasm swallowing them whole. Henry, never one for softness, cleared his throat. Nicole, this was never about hurting you. We loved you, but we feared the scandal. Margaret's situation she was coerced into giving you up was complicated. We thought you'd be safer if you never knew. As anger surged through Nicole's veins, she wanted to scream, to demand answers, but curiosity won out. Margaret Simmons was coerced, she asked. Her adoptive mother's gaze fell to her lap. Yes. She worked at an adoption center that closed down years ago, in Missouri. You were taken from her under duress. She had no choice. Leslie Dupree Richardson facilitated the arrangement. At that moment, the world tilted on its axis. Leslie, the very aunt who had been Eva's guiding star, had a hand in this. How could someone as composed, as revered for her elegance and generosity, have orchestrated the placement of a child under coercion? The realization cut deeper than any blade. Leslie did this? Why would she involve you in something so cruel? Mariah shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. She said she was helping Margaret find a secure home for you. But she insisted no one could know that your birth would become a liability. At the time, we trusted her. We didn't know the extent to which she'd manipulate the situation. From that moment forward, Nicole's life transformed into a quest for answers, each step fraught with perilous revelations. She left the Stanton estate for Missouri, tracing the brittle footprints of a defunct adoption center, Sunrise Haven, once renowned for reuniting unwanted or abandoned children with families willing to give them a fresh start. Sunrise Haven, however, had shuttered its doors under a cloud of controversy, whispers of financial mismanagement, forged documents, and coerced adoptions had plagued its final years. Nicole arrived at the abandoned site, the paint peeling from window frames and the echo of laughter long since vanished from crumbling corridors. The local librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins, remembered the center well. She had preserved old newspapers reporting that the facility had been forced to close in 1998 after a state investigation uncovered a network of illicit practices. Nicole's pulse quickened as she examined the faded headlines. Sunrise Haven scandal, forced adoptions and missing records, read one article. Another lamented that dozens of children had vanished into undisclosed families, their fates untraceable. Could one of those missing children have been her long-lost sibling Eva's own blood, cast aside into secrecy? Driven by the need to find the truth, Nicole requested the sealed state records, citing her own status as an adoptee. It took weeks of legal wrangling, but she obtained fragmented files, birth certificates stamped with forged signatures, transfer orders signed by unknown officials, and adoption agreements listing families with names now obscured by time. In the margins of one document, she noticed something startling, a notation indicating that, in addition to Stanton adopting a female infant, which corresponded to her own file, another infanta male child had been transferred to a family in New York City under the name Montgomery. The date matched Eva's birth year. The implication was staggering. Eva might have had a twin brother, snatched away at birth and hidden from the world. If that boy had survived, he might still be alive, bearing the true bloodline of Dupree Richardson and possessing a claim to the inheritance that had long been presumed Eva's alone. Such a revelation could upend the carefully balanced dynamics of two powerful families, the Stantons and the Dupree Richardson, sending shockwaves through corporate boards, philanthropic foundations, and the glitzy circles of high society. But first, Nicole had to confirm the veracity of these records. She traveled back to New York City, retracing the Montgomery's address, a stately brownstone in the Upper East Side, its facade crisp and unyielding. The current occupants, a kindly retired couple who bought the house a decade earlier, knew nothing of the boy or the previous residents. Yet as Nicole spoke of the documents she held, the retired couple exchanged uneasy glances. They confessed that the Montgomerys had sold off many personal items when they left in 2005, boxes of photographs, journals, and letters auctioned to settle debts. Nicole sensed that within those personal artifacts might lie clues, a photograph of a baby boy with features uncanny in their resemblance to Eva Dupree Richardson, a tousle of dark curls, observant hazel eyes, a tiny cleft chin. With the couple's reluctant permission, she scoured the items they had salvaged, eventually locating a forgotten album in a moth-eaten cardboard box. There, taped to a yellowing page, was a Polaroid photograph, spray-painted, edges curling, that showed the infant boy cradled in the arms of a woman whose face was obscured by shadow. Scribbled on the back in blue ink were the words, "James, Sunrise Haven, 1998. Beneath it, a barely legible note, "Brother of Eva. Keep safe." Nicole's breath caught. This boy James was the missing link, a sibling lost to time, an heir with a destiny entwined with Evelyn's. She clutched the photograph as though it were a lifeline, wondering what fate had writ for James as he grew up, unaware of the secrets that bound him to two families of staggering wealth and power. Armed with this revelation, Nicole returned to the Stanton Medical Center archives to compare the photograph with images from family gatherings. The resemblance between James and Eva was uncanny, a shared profile, a dimple that appeared when they smiled, and eyes that seemed to search the world for answers. She realized she had to break the news to Eva, knowing that the revelation could either bind them as sisters or sear their relationship beyond repair. Eva, meanwhile, had been reeling from her own near abduction, still piecing together the fragments of the conspiracy orchestrated by Geraldine Beaumont and her mother, Marisol. When Nicole arrived unannounced at the Dupree Richardson estate bearing the photograph and the irrefutable evidence, Eva regarded her with a mixture of suspicion and relief. Their embrace was hesitant at first, then urgent, as if they were trying to merge disparate histories into a single thread of shared understanding. In the privacy of Eva's chamber, a room lined with family portraits and the faint scent of lavender, Nicole laid out every detail she had uncovered: her own adoption at Sunrise Haven, Leslie Dupree Richardson's manipulation of her birth, and the existence of James Montgomery, the long-lost brother who could claim his rightful place in both the Stanton and Dupree Richardson dynasties. Eva's eyes flickered with astonishment. "My brother," she whispered, stroking the Polaroid as though it were fragile glass. "All this time, I thought I was the only Dupree Richardson child with this blood." Nicole nodded, tears brimming. "And Leslie used us both. When you were born, she took you in as if you were her own, obscuring James's existence. She planted you in my life to control both of you, ensuring that no one would question the inheritance line." Eva covered her mouth with trembling fingers, the enormity of the betrayal crashing over her. "So my entire life, me status, my place in the family, it's all built on lies." As the two sisters absorbed the magnitude of the secret, a plan began to form. They needed to find James, to bring him into the light, and ensure that his rights were recognized. But first they had to confront Leslie, whose graceful mask had finally begun to crack under the strain of her own machinations. They arranged a discreet meeting in the library, where portraits of the Dupree Richardson ancestors glowered down as witnesses to this confrontation. Leslie entered, her posture composed, though her eyes flickered with something like regret. "Nicole," she said, her voice polite but distant. "Eva." She paused, as though weighing her words. "I assume you know why I asked you both here." Eva met her gaze, steel and vulnerability entwined. "We know everything," she replied. "The forced adoptions. The deception. We know about James." Leslie's breathing caught, and she closed her eyes as though searching for courage. I did what I had to for the family," she began, voice quavering. "James was in Dang-era child born to an unstable mother at a place on the brink of collapse. I promised his safety. I believed adopting you, Nicole, would protect him. I never meant for it to become this twisted." Nicole's anger flared. "You used us both. We were pawns in your game, orphans in the eyes of the family, kept apart so you could manipulate the line of inheritance." Leslie's shoulders slumped. "I thought I was doing the right thing. But the moment you're born changes everything. I met the Montgomerys, but as you said, I kept secrets, carving a path that only benefited my own standing in the family. For that, I am truly sorry." Eva's voice rasped with emotion. "Sorry doesn't undo the lies, Leslie. But we have a chance now to set things right for James, for ourselves." It was in that moment that Nicole and Eva solidified their bond, vowing to locate James and integrate him fully into the family's affairs. They combined their resources, Nicole's network of investigative contacts and Eva's insider knowledge of the Dupree Richardson estate to trace James's current whereabouts. Clues pointed to New York City's Greenwood Memorial Hospital, where a man under the name James Montgomery was born to a woman who died in childbirth. Nicole, using her Stanton influence, had the medical records released. Tests confirmed that his DNA matched their own. James, now 26 and working as a community organizer in Harlem, had literally roots in the soil of philanthropy. Unaware of his lineage, he spent his days advocating for displaced youth, a cause eerily parallel to the Mission of Hope's REUP charity founded by the Dupree Richardsons decades ago. When the call came from a lawyer representing Eva, James was wary. The concept of long-lost royal siblings had always sounded like the stuff of fairy tales, not the reality of his modest existence. Yet when Nicole appeared at his apartment, her presence at once regal and disarming, and laid the Polaroid and medical confirmations before him, his world tilted on its axis. The older sister he never knew was standing in his living room, handing him the fragments of a history he had no idea was his own. Tears streamed down James's cheeks as he absorbed the news. He was a Dupree Richardson, a Stanton, a man of status who had grown up believing he was ordinary. The emotional resonance of discovering his origins eclipsed any sense of betrayal. He felt a powerful yearning to connect with the family he had lost before he could even remember their names. Eva and Nicole guided him in a step-by-step embrace of the new reality, genealogical research to confirm his lineage, legal filings to establish his claim to the family estate, and counseling sessions to help him adjust to the swirling complexities of a legacy built on controversy and wealth. Together, they navigated the perilous waters of media interest, shielding James from the sensational headlines that threatened to reframe his life as a reality show spectacle. Yet they also recognized that his emergence had the power to heal the wounds inflicted by decades of deception. By acknowledging James publicly, they would honor the memory of the children lost to Sunrise Haven's dark practices and bring redemption to the Dupree Richardson name. In the weeks that followed, the trio Nicole, Eva, and James worked tirelessly to restructure the inheritance. They challenged the existing will, which had placed Eva as the sole heir, arguing that James's rights were never extinguished, and that fairness demanded he be recognized. Their legal team, bolstered by evidence of Leslie's deception and marred by Mary Saul's complicity in the earlier embezzlement scandal, pushed for a revised distribution of assets. As tensions flared in courtrooms and champagne-fueled boardrooms alike, the narrative shifted. This was no longer a tale of mere inheritance, but a reclaiming of humanity over greed. The public, captivated by the unfolding drama, watched as the family's secrets spilled into the open, fighting for the voice of the long-lost heir who grew up in relative anonymity. Meanwhile, Nicole and Eva found strength in each other, forging a sisterhood strengthened by shared pain and mutual respect. James, drawing on his experience as a community activist, proposed that a significant portion of the family's wealth once hoarded in silent maleficency be redirected to establish a new branch of Hope's Reach, dedicated to uncovering and supporting adoptees and uniting them with their birth families. When the final verdict was rendered, the court ruled in favor of James's claim. He was to receive an equal share of the estate, and the family's philanthropic mission would be reshaped under the joint stewardship of the three siblings. Leslie, confronted with the consequences of her actions, retreated from public life, offering her contrite apologies and disappearing into self-imposed exile. The Dupree-Richardson mansion, once a stage for whispered conspiracies, transformed into a headquarters for a renewed legacy, one built on honesty, compassion, and the belief that blood ties should unite rather than divide. Nicole, having overcome the trauma of discovering her true origins, stepped into a new role as an advocate for adoptee rights, using her platform to lobby for transparent adoption practices and ethical oversight. Eva, having reclaimed her heritage, dedicated herself to ensuring that Hope's Reach never again became a conduit for corruption. And James, who had once walked the streets of Harlem imagining a future of service to his community, now held the power to reshape the philanthropic landscape of two powerful families, tethering resources to the upliftment of the most vulnerable. As autumn's crisp air settled over the Dupree-Richardson estate, the three siblings gathered in the greenhousey sunlit sanctuary filled with blooms that symbolized renewal. They stood before a single white rose, its petals unfurling toward the sky, representing the unbreakable bond forged through adversity. In that moment, they realized that their lives, once defined by secrets and shadows, had been rewritten. Beyond the gates of their storied lineage, they had found each other, discovering that the truest inheritance lay not in titles or bank accounts, but in the shared resilience that emerges when family is chosen, reclaimed, and reborn.